So imagine you support a club and you're on top of the world. You got trophies in the cabinet. You got legends on the pitch. You got millions of dollars in the bank. Life is sweet. It's exactly like being an Arsenal fan right now. Now imagine waking up tomorrow to find everything is erased. You have no titles, no top flight status, and all your billionaire directors are facing jail time. Calciopoli was not just a refereeing error or a mistake here and there. It was a whole shadow government. It was a hidden mob running Italian football from the back of a blacked-out sedan. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Fabio Cannavaro, Patrick Vieira. These weren't just any players. These were icons, legends. And these players were all caught in the crossfire that they had nothing to do with. And by the time all the dust had settled, the strongest league on earth was broken. And 20 years later, many of these scars are still very, very visible. Today, we're going to dive into Calciopoli, the heist that totally killed the golden era of Italian football.
4 top Italian teams have been accused of cheating by fixing matches.
The office of the Italian Football Federation in Rome has been raided by police.
Italian football will never be the same again.
In the early 2000s, Serie A was known as the richest, most star-studded league in the world. The way we currently see and talk about the Premier League and the same way it's televised, this was exactly how Serie A was. And this was exemplified in the 2006 World Cup, when Italy made it all the way to the summit and won the 2006 World Cup, confirming their status as the kings of football. And just as it all seemed so great, it all came crashing down. Calciopoli directly translates to Footballville, but this is an analogy to Tangentopoli, which was an event in the early 1990s when a bunch of top politicians were busted for both fraud and corruption on several counts in Italy. Calciopoli was a massive scandal where top Italian clubs were accused of interfering with referee assignments to gain advantages in Serie A games. And this wasn't just players missing sitters or matches being directly fixed, but this was all the top club executives manipulating ref assignments behind the scenes. The main poster boy for this whole scandal was the final boss of sporting injustice, Luciano Moggi, the owner and sporting director of Juventus, debatably the most popular Italian club.
The Messina game, said Moggi. Send me Consolo and Battaglia. I've already done the ref, said Pareto. And who are you sending us? Consolo and Battaglia, I think. And for the Berlusconi trophy, I want Pieri, all right?
And remember that World Cup final we were just talking about? That took place 2 months after the Calciopoli originally came to light. And of the 11 players that started for Italy and the 3 that got subbed on, all 14 played in the Serie A. And of both teams, all 28 players that touched the field that day, 8 of them played for Juventus, 3 of them playing for France, and 5 Juventus players playing for Italy. So it was not good luck seeing Juventus take such a big controversial hit. The system was dubbed the Moggiopoli because of the way he controlled everything in the system, from their transfer markets to which journalists got the inside scoop and which ones did not. Moggi was found manipulating the system of which referees were appointed to which games. There's a story of him in 2004 that states that after a 2-1 loss to Regina, he locked a referee, Gianluca Paparesta, and all of his assistant referees into a change room. And Moggi was so furious with all of the calls they were making, especially that a penalty was not awarded to Juventus, that Moggi was on his Hall of Fame mob bus timing. All the reports say that Moggi threatened to take the keys with him to the airport and fly away to leave the referees to fend for themselves and find their own way out of the change room. And this situation was used as a poster, and it was put at the forefront of the Moggi system and showed how he really loves to have control of every single thing going on around him. The entire scandal first came to light after Italian police were investigating a completely unrelated matter. They were wiretapping calls and revealed conversations between club executives and ref officials. And these calls revealed that club officials were trying to get favorable referees. And for favorable games, certain referees were avoided. And heavy pressure was put on to influence decisions. These clubs' tactics were to get friendly referees to ref their games while getting more strict referees to ref their opponents' games, giving key players cards and getting them suspended for future games. Although this news was uncovered from police wiretaps, it wasn't a major sports press that triggered the Calciopoli outrage. It was actually a paper called Tu Romanista, which was a newsletter dedicated to Roma fans. And once the tapes became public, Italian football fans completely exploded. Hundreds and thousands of hours of wiretap phone calls were released, and these tapes were called intercettazioni, which just translates to wiretapping. And these phone calls were what exposed Maggi bragging about locking the refs in the change room and not favoring Juve. Although a lot of the times when we speak about Calciopoli, Juventus is the biggest name involved, and no one really remembers any of the other clubs. But there were several clubs in Italy also involved in the match-fixing scandal, including AC Milan, Fiorentina, Lazio, and Regina. AC Milan was given an 8-point deduction and forced to play one game behind closed doors. Same with Fiorentina, they were deducted 15 points, but they were also kicked out of the Champions League for the 2006-07 season and were forced to play 2 games behind closed doors. Lazio was deducted 3 points and kicked out of the UEFA Cup, which we now know is the Europa League. And lastly, Regina was given an 11-point deduction and was given a €100,000 fine, along with their club president being given a €30,000 fine. And he was banned from any football-related matters for 2.5 years. But Juventus was given the heaviest consequences of all of these teams. Juventus was stripped of 2 league titles from the 2004-05 and 2005-06 seasons. And the next season, they started with a slight point deduction and were given a point deduction that season, which saw them relegated to the Serie B. Several of the officials, including Luciano Moggi, were handed lifetime bans from FIFA, so they were not allowed any soccer involvement for the entirety of their lifetimes. And it's really ironic because Inter Milan is given the title through default because it had to be taken away from Juventus. But later sources show that they may have been just as involved in the scandals as well. Apart from the clubs, a referee named Massimo De Santis was also given a lifetime ban for his involvement in the scandal as well. And he was known to have ref plenty of games and has possibly was in on some of the favoring towards Juve. Juventus had a long-standing status as being one of Europe's biggest clubs, and they had many people doubting the legitimacy of all their previous seasons where they were dominating Italy. Because of this doubt, plenty of high-caliber legendary players felt like they were forced out of the club, as they shared the same betrayal that all fans felt, because it wasn't coaches or players or opposition players causing injustice. It was the club's officials. They were the ones behind closed doors that were causing all of this injustice to everyone. Serie A's reputation took a massive hit, and especially many of Juventus' top players left. Fabio Cannavaro went to Real Madrid, Thuram and Zambrotta left for Barcelona, and their top striker at the time, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, left for their direct rivals and went to Inter Milan, just as a bit of a fuck you to Juve. All of these big-name departures, and the Serie A low-key declined in competitiveness for a couple of years. Juventus were given the biggest punishment of all the teams involved, and they did eventually return to dominance, but it took years of rebuilding. Although Juventus started with a point deduction, they won the Serie B championship, and they were back in the Champions League within 2 years. But after promotion, they did struggle with 2 consecutive 7th-place finishes in the Serie A, which is crazy. Imagine Juventus finishing 7th, 2 years in a row. But shortly after this struggle, Juventus began their run of winning 9 Serie A titles in a row, which is an all-time record, and reaching the 2 Champions League finals, although they did not win it. Many stars which had the option to leave didn't, and stayed to help rebuild Juventus, and they became solidified as icons, like Del Piero, Nedved, Trezeguet, and of course, Gigi Buffon. And these players played in Serie B and helped reform Juventus from nothing. Although Juventus seemed like they have returned to dominance, there were many controversies that made it hard for fans and even neutrals that weren't really worried about it to return to the trust they once had to Juventus. Throughout the trial, all of the officials involved in the corruption were punished in sporting court, hence all the bans and fines and point deductions. But no one was punished in criminal court, even though this was a high-scale corruption. Many criminal cases were continually adjourned, and then the case had to be dropped due to the statute of limitations in 2015. The statute of limitations is just the thing the law does where if the current event that's being debated happened more than 10 years ago, you can't be tried on it, just because you don't want people holding blackmail and then holding things for a long amount of time. But in situations like this, it tends to help the people who are being prosecuted, or the criminals in this case. Throughout the case, lots of evidence was destroyed and it also went missing, so it raised a bunch of red flags that a bunch of other clubs were just as involved as Juventus, but they were given far lighter punishments. It's almost as if the Serie A punished Juventus the heaviest to make them an example, but didn't want to give everyone a punishment just because they didn't want to too severely damage the look of their league, which raises a lot of red flags in the looks of fans and neutrals. All this gray area is the reason 20 years later, Calciopoli is still debated about. Calciopoli was when the trust in referees collapsed. Calciopoli was not just a scandal. It was the moment that all football fans, Italian or not, realized the game is not always decided on the pitch. Thank you for listening. If you did, I appreciate it so much. As always, I tried something a little bit different with the script writing of this video. Let me know if you noticed. Thanks. Appreciate you guys so much. Goodbye. Have a good life. See ya.